Hey, yeah, it's Andrew, and today we'll kick off the N25 review sessions with a game plan. Same as M25, it is a good idea to spend a bit of time discussing how to best utilize the next 6 weeks before the exam. So, first off, to know where you are, do a set of past papers, then mark yourself according to the mark scheme. If you have any questions regarding how to apply the mark scheme, please let me know. I would be happy to help. Then you will compare your marks to the grade boundaries to know where you stand. Step 2 is doing a post-mark analysis. You are going to diagnose your mistakes. There are three categories of mistakes: arithmetic, algebraic, or topical. For an arithmetic mistake or for a tiny slip, the remedy is simple. Just do more questions. You're making those stupid errors in air quote because you're not yet fluent with the basic procedures that you're expected to know for most of the exam. And therefore, your brain is taking a lot of working memory to recall the steps needed to solve the question, and things like index laws will fall through the cracks. 2. Algebraic mistakes. This is similar to 1, except that it's a lot more serious. The way to go about this is to revise your algebra and then do a shitload of questions. 3. Topic wise. For each topic, for each question on the paper, you will identify the topic. And based on the mark you obtain on the questions, you will categorize the topics into red, amber, or green. Green means perfect, I got this, I nailed this, this is trivial. Yellow, I'm not entirely sure how I would go about this, but I had to go with it. I give it a go. I had to snap at it, and this is what we have. Red. Have we ever seen this before? What is this? If it is in the amber or red category, it is to be added to your to revise checklist. And lastly, please have some notes, maybe on a maybe a paper notebook or maybe on a notes app, doesn't really matter. Keep track of the topics to revise. From step 2, you should have a list of topics to revise before the final exam. Now we'll talk about the order in which you cover those topics. If you're confident with less than 50% of topics, please spend all of your time to catch up. There is a lot of content, especially if you're in HL. If you're confident with more than half of the topics, I would highly recommend splitting the time between practice papers and revising content on your to revise list. Here is a list of topics and the order in which I would recommend you to revise. You will start with Part A, Foundation of Algebra, moving on to quadratics and problem stats. Those are the absolute fundamental for the rest of the course. Then you can pick and choose one of the 5 topics in section B, and you keep working on them until you're done with all 5 topics in this section. Then you move on to column C, and so on. Do not move on to the next section before finishing all of the units. After talking about what to revise, now we'll talk about how to revise. First and foremost, rereading notes in math is absolute garbage. Do not ever do that because it doesn't work. Use that time to solve more questions. If you're on Instagram and you see people showing off their fancy, beautiful notes for math, I would say it is a colossal waste of time. Instead of making your notes look absolutely spotless, Your job is really to just do more questions. Step 1. Look at the theory and analyze the word example in your textbook. 2. Solve the exercises that are relevant to that word example. Repeat steps 1 and 2 until you go through all the examples, and then you revisit the topics after a couple days. This is spaced repetition, which you may have heard when revising for other subjects. It is a very useful technique to reinforce your storage and retrieval strength. And you will do it for each sub-chapter on the content that you need to work on. For example, chapter 3.1 has 2 word examples. Word example 1 corresponds to exercises 1 and 3. Word example 2 corresponds to exercises 4 to 6. So, the order in which you should go about this is example 1, exercises 1 to 3, then example 2, exercises 4 to 6, and then revisiting exercises 7 to 10 a couple days after the first time you cover the content. Before moving on, I have a short Q&A section that students always ask during this session. Question 1, of course, how much time to study? This is very subjective. It depends on your affinity with the course content, aka, do you like math or do you not really enjoy it? Do you do it without anyone forcing you to? Or you need to feel the pressure to keep you going? Focus. And the processing speed. Now, I firmly believe that everyone can study at a very good pace, but the difference between us is the level of mastery on the prerequisites. So if your prerequisites are lacking or they're not as strong as they should be, that will definitely slow you down while preparing for the exams. 2. What textbooks should we use? First off, HEAS. You can't really go wrong with HEAS. Explanation, good. Questions, good. It's a solid textbook. The organization is a little messy because you have one core book, another core for HL, and then a book that's AAHL, that's only for AA students. It's a bit complicated. Pearson and Oxford, in my honest opinion, they're not bad, but that wouldn't be my go-to. If your teacher uses it, use it. Otherwise, I would genuinely look for a textbook that would suit you a bit better. For Harder is a good textbook, but they're good for questions. They are not good for organization, and they are not good for explanations either. The questions are outstanding because the writers for the Harder textbooks are the writers for the on-campus textbooks, which we tend to say is the holy grail of textbooks for the own HL syllabus. Question 3. How much time do I need to study to get X, XB 5, 6, or 7? If you want to jump from 6 to 7, my only answer is a lot. You will have to do a ton of past papers, ideally at least 4 years worth of questions. Not so that you would see the exact question again, or even the same questions with different numbers, but rather it is to increase your exposure to very well written questions that have been on your exams that would give you a good expectations of what to expect on D-Day. 2. Maximize your odds. You should solve questions that are much harder than the real exams, but not too much that you're totally put off. Here are the recommendations. Obviously, it'll be a missed opportunity if I don't plug my own website. Link is in the description. and also the Mux server. Christos Nicolaides is another good question bank. The questions are not too creative, but I would say it is a good practice if you are looking for level 6. Metas Math is another classic. It's catered towards the A level people. However, it is still very useful. If you're not sure which part of a syllabus is or is not on the IB exam, please ask us and we'll be more than happy to answer. The next tier of question would be the AEA, or the Advanced Extension Award. This is probably not as well known. The questions are harder than what you would normally find on an A-level exam. It is usually considered a stepping stone to STEP, and it would definitely stretch the grade 7s. So if you are able to get a merit on AEA, that means that you are definitely on track for a 7. Please keep in mind that there's a lot of content on AAHL that are not on the AEA. So do not neglect other topics, but it is still a very good source of questions. TMUA. TMUA is the admission test for various programs, and I would recommend focusing on paper 1, which is simply non-calculator questions. The questions are entirely appropriate for SL. The TMUA does not cover most topics on your course. So please do not forget to revise all the topics. 5. Here's how I would recommend alternating between revision and papers. The flowchart simply summarizes what we have discussed up to this point. For the 6s, you will be doing very similar work to the aspiring 7s, but you don't need to solve as many papers. If you have a pretty good idea of what you're doing, you should really spend time on other courses if you don't really like math. If you do enjoy math, then might as well go for a 7. However, if you're only looking for a 4 or 5, and your foundations is not where it should be, I would start with the survival series on my website. It is my vision of a reduced curriculum for grade 5 students. For AAHL students that only target a 5, please focus on the SL stuff. Just learn a few HL stuff that can show up. Say, basic complex numbers, say, dot product, cross product, dealing with factors, a bit of trig identities, maybe a bit of functions, and skip all of the harder stuff. You don't need to get above a 60 even for a 5. Most likely you will need around a 50. The SL stuff should already be worth like what, 30, 40 marks? So you really do not need that many marks on the HL only content. If you're going for a 5, I would not hesitate to say, please skip counting principles. If you find sketching reciprocal functions difficult, skip it. It's like what, 4 marks? That's fine. You don't need to get 100% for grade 5. Part 6. How to set up the environment for mocks. For the previous parts, I've emphasized the importance of practicing loads and loads of papers. In fact, I would recommend spending most of your time just solving questions. Here's how you should set up for mock exams. 1. Do not ever have your notes nearby. You are going to look at it. The same thing would having your phone nearby. More often than not, it's very hard to resist the temptation. best way is to remove the Q altogether. 2, you should use the same GDC that you will actually use on the exam day, because you have to be very familiar with the functionalities of your calculator. Know it inside out. Know where to find the cumulative PDF, the all the graphing functions, and solve or equivalent depending on your model, and so on. If possible, please find a noisy environment. For example, go to a coffee shop, go to a public library. Well, that's still a little quiet. Go to the shopping mall and take your exam, the mock paper there. Why? One, you will not be taking your exam at home, right? So it's always a good idea to change your environment. Ideally, you should be practicing your exam in the same context that you'll be writing the final ones, but that's not always possible. 2, when you're in a noisy environment, your brain literally has to cancel out all the noises around you. And this is crucial because I know a couple students who are immediately thrown off just when hearing the noises that other test makers make. For example, the pencil or the water bottles. Like even the tiniest noise would derail them. You don't want to be one of them. Please practice in an environment that has an abundance of noise, especially those that you have zero control over. 3, when time is up, continue working on the paper using a different pen. This will be your infinity mark. How much you can do without time pressure, but with mushy brains. I have to emphasize this because if you tackle the harder items right from the beginning, well, that's a bit easier, right? Because you haven't used so much of your brain cells. This is usually how it works on the exam as well. You will have a go at the hardest part at the very end of the paper after having done 100-ish marks worth of questions. If your infinity mark is greater than your current mark, it would be a good idea to focus on time management if there's a massive difference. If it is roughly similar, then focusing too much on exam techniques would not do a lot of good for you. You should focus on the content. Now, if you're in 100 plus range of 110 for HL, or if you're working at say 78 of 80 at SL, then you can safely throw all these advice out of the window because you are already there. Lastly, follow the mark scheme as much as possible. I know it can be confusing. It was very confusing for me at first to understand what the mark scheme is awarding, but we're here to help if you have any questions.